Now we can see we got a little bit more head coming up there, but we want to cram as much stuff in here as we can. So what we want to do is just above that nostril, I want to put a very rare for me straight in stop cut. I usually carve away from different things, but because we have two things joining, I want to come up like so. That's going to establish the top of that eyebrow like so. Now the rest of this, we got to curve it, but let's just give us some good lines there. All right. And we got a little bit of, can y'all see it where I missed it right there? Let's just connect those two like so. Right. Now this guy to me is taking on another shape. He's looking very mean. He's looking very droopy. He's also looking with this flat down. He can also be fat. All we have to do is narrow it more up here and make it come out. Now, there's a lot of people who try to get into, it has to be this way, it has to be that way. There's different face shapes. What I mean by that is, you know, your normal face is the oval, right? But there's nothing wrong with doing the glass of water shape, right? There's nothing wrong with doing a triangle shape. There's nothing wrong with doing a square shape. As long as it's rounded, but it's got a different shape, right? It doesn't matter as long as you get everything in there and round them up. Now, what I mean by that is everybody's got different roundness to their shape. It's not always a perfectly symmetrical face. So if you're seeing something, this box is kind of like making you laugh a little bit, stick with the box, just round it off. We're not going to do that because we're going to come way up in here and do some of this stuff, but it doesn't mean that we have to come straight down here and oval everything back out. What we want to do now is I want to take my fingernail. Remember how we said measuring from the fingernail? I want to come back about halfway from here to here, and that's about right in there. You see how I'm using my fingernail, but I'm not on the tip. I'm right there where I'm sticking that fingernail in between right there, right? So now I want to come here and want to stick the fingernail on the bottom. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go beep, 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 beep. I'm going to draw on the top and make sure that I'm somewhat symmetrical on each side. So now all I have to do, remember the Post-it note? I want my ear to be this big. Why that big? Because that's where I drew it. Doesn't matter. But what I do want to do is I want to put that line there and that line right there. So now when I flip it around to the other side, I can put that line there and the back of the paper is there. So now my ears are the same bigness. All right. And that looks like a really long C. So let me just drop back an 1/8 of an inch there and about a 1/8 of an inch there. And that's going to be perfect. Because why is it perfect? Because it looks perfect and it doesn't have to be crazy. As long as it looks like an ear when you're done with it, then that's all that matters. As long as you have fun doing it, that's all that matters. What I do want to do is I want to come just above this hairline right here. And this is just the gouge that I picked up. And I'm going to come from the ear and go back. So 2 little lines. Now, depending on your wood grain, just come around the back side of that ear like so, making you a box or a ledge or whatever it is that you call that. It's going to be an ear, but I know that different people have different names for them. Now, the line that you created, I created 2. It might benefit you to only create 1, so let's erase 1. Wherever the front of that ear is, goes straight down from your face. That's my face. So I want to go straight down. The front of the ear, straight down. Right like so. So the front of this ear, straight down, again, with my face, not straight down the body of the carving. So straight down my face, right there. Now again, wood grain here, some stuff broke. Woe is me. It shouldn't break any more than it should, because it's not going to break down into that shoulder there, right? So now look at this guy. What does he look like now? Well, to me, he looks like an old, crusty World War II guy. We could narrow this up and put a little hat on him. So, and I'm only telling you that because that's kind of how my brain works when I'm doing this stuff. I cannot tell you how many carvings I change along the way just because they start looking like something else. So don't be afraid to change them. So now what I want to do is, you see these two little goofy lines that I drew here? They have purpose. And the purpose is it's going to start shaping the temple area and up into those eyebrows. Now, again, we've got a nice little fancy stop cut here, and it now should be above the ear on both sides, right? So what I want to do is I want to come into here and I want to scoop it in toward that ear. Again, just keep playing with your stop cut like that. Now, again, I don't want that heavy line right there, so we're going to get rid of it. Don't worry about any of that. We could trim this stuff up as we go later. You see how I'm just coming up the ear, right like that? Now, this guy's not going to have any sideburns, so we want a smooth transition. And if we look at it from here, and you want to get it more smooth or smoother, you take you a number 7 and go between the ear and the temple and just curve it back. That's going to give your ear a little bit more flare into the face, right? Now, if you want to, look at those curls, right? I'm just kidding. Right, like so. All right. So now we're going to do the same thing. And again, we've got wood grain issues on this side, so we're going to have to be very, very cautious on how heavy-handed we are, because we already know this wood grain is not our friend here. Matter of fact, it's still wanting to carve downward, but I am going to take that gouge, but instead of going here, which is going to break, I'm going to come in from here, and then I'm going to roll it around like so. If you play with those cuts, you can get them to work. Now here, it looks like it's very straight. This one goes down. All right. I look for all that stuff because let's just exaggerate that straightness and start coming in with this guy. Why? Why not? Let's just change the whole look and shape. Let's make this one very boxy. And let's just curve a couple of these high spots off like so. Now I'm going to tickle that hair back just a little bit because I'd much rather cut it than it to break later, right? Like so. I got my thumb guard off, so that's why I was being very cautious there. So I got a little bit of pencil line right there, a little bit of a high spot right there. And you see these sharp points that are on the very front. Let's just ease those off. Now I want to come in about halfway between this line that we made and the side of the nose, and I'm going to ease that cheek just by rolling it up and then continuing all the way around. You see how we just rolled it and brought that cheek down, but we took off that high spot. This one, we're carving a different side or different kind of face. And what I mean by that is he's just going to have more of a cheekbone over here because all this is going to come off. This is too low. If we look at, you see the original cut line on the bandsaw, we just need to follow. You see how that's following that way? We just need to follow it right along there. I don't know if y'all seen me jump there. My dog in the background decided she was going to snore and hack or do something, and it scared the bejesus out of me. I thought a monster had just came up beside me and trying to attack me. All right. So now you can be very comical. Watch this. If I come in right there and just put a little something, his mouth can be way down here. and he gets a different look entirely. Not everything has to be perfectly matchy-matchy, okay? He can be singing. You can come in here and make his mouth open. You can make his mouth pointed down. You can make the nose come up. You can come in here and talk about that eyebrow, like we talked about, or not the eyebrow, the bridge of his nose, having more um, of a profile, right? You can change it from any direction you want. This is what I'm talking about being a fluid carver. Don't be afraid to play around with what you already have. Now, this cheek is going in, so I'm going to accentuate that by pulling it back. He's just got a big fat cheek on this side. And let me just put a little triangle right over here. Let's pop that mouth just ever so slightly open on this side, like so. Just give him a little, is it a snarl? Is it a smile? Is it a whatever? It's at this point, it's just something, just to break up the symmetry of the face. I'm not a symmetrical carver, so therefore I don't try. However, get that glove out of the way. We get a little bit of detail there. There we go. When we came down originally, that smile line, I just want to come up and take a little bit of that smile line. I don't want it now. I now don't want it coming all the way down to the bottom of the cheek. And see, I took out more wood than I thought I should have. That's okay. Just angle it up. There's no right way or wrong way. There's only whatever way you come up with and whatever way makes you happy. Now, everything that, any instructor tells you is another tool for your toolbox. If something that somebody tells you resonates with you, like an eye, oh, I love the way such and such does his eyes or her eyes, then take what they have to offer. And maybe somebody else says, oh man, I really love the way they do hands or noses or feet or whatever. Then take what you like out of that. And then the same way with anything, you're taking bits and pieces to make it your own. The way that I do stuff is just a way. It is not the way. Some might even argue that it's not any way. It's just me rambling and making stuff up as I go along, and hopefully it works, and sometimes it does, right? I'm just going to knock off that sharp line. I would much rather it knock off than for it to break off later. Now, again, we're going to come, not again, but secondary, we're going to come in and start knocking out a bunch of this fabric. We want that fabric to come above the arm, right? And then we want the arm and or shoulder. So in other words, we're going to have 2 rows in here. And we can use a big tool, a small tool, doesn't matter. I just want to establish the bottom of the row and the top of the shoulder right through there. You see how now we've got a lump of fabric up there? Now, because this shoulder is higher, right? And actually this shoulder should be lower, because when you're looking over at your shoulder, this shoulder is going to raise slightly. And if that's not what it does, then just pretend I know what I'm talking about and just humor me. We're going to lower this shoulder. All right. So we're going to lower that shoulder. That looks about even. So we're going to take off just another, about 1/8 of an inch right there, like so. And we're just going to knock off that corner right there. And now we're going to come in here and go above that little lip and go back toward the head right through there. Now, we don't want to dig in there, okay, because that's going to be his neck. We're going to come in there about like that right there. Now, that's now creating a square block. We know that the fabric's not going to hang off squarely, but here's the 50-cent tip or trick of the day. Our brain tells us to carve straight across. You can't, because the head is turned. You have to carve this way with the head, right? So you see how it's not straight across, it's with the head. You see my finger lining up with the head? That's straight across. So you're going to get up into here, which is going to mess you up. So don't think in terms of, well, I got to carve this way, and next thing you know, you're in the halfway in the upper part of the ear. So again, we're going to carve downward. We're going to follow and trust our line right there. Don't matter how far you carve, because guess what? All that right in here is going to come out. So if you want to spend your time now and just hack you out some big cuts, that's perfectly fine. Again, we're just wanting that downward cut. And now here it's going to be an upward cut along that ear. We're not going to get down into the torso. We're just going to connect the two. We're just following that hairline. We don't need these big bulky things, so let's knock off the corners there. Get the back of the elbow. Here, we're not going to touch the back of the elbow. Let's just go ahead and get this high spot off and start bringing it up into the neck right in here. And let's go ahead and just get some of that ugly out of the way, like so. Now let's establish the neckline, which is there. And let's establish where this collar or this robe is going to hang. I'd like to come down with it just a little bit, but this one may work. So let's just, from this, bring it. Now, when I'm pushing hard like that, what I want to emphasize is, look where my pinky is. My pinky is already breaking. I can now only push as I roll. This is over exaggerated. If I'm like this and I'm pushing like that, guess what happens when it goes through that wood? That glove does not care. So I'm always pivoting on another point, being safe, even this close to my finger here. What y'all are not seeing is I already know I've created a hole. So even if I slip, I have to slip like 3 inches down in there. But again, look at my pinky. So if you guys carve like this, you may want to move that hand away. But then you're pushing against your grip here. So that's why it's important that if we're on a table or something of that magnitude, now you're not putting all those secondary stressors on your wrist. You're just using that table as a back push, so to speak. And then your pressure can be 2 pinkies, right? You don't have to have a ton of hand strength. You just have to work within the environment you're good at, right? So, because now all my forces stopping or coming back against the table. So I run into people all the time says, well, I don't have this, the hand strength that, I can't do this because of grip, so on and so forth. So always be thinking about how else can you do it. Just because I hold my tools this way, or just because somebody else says, well, you can make a good cut this way, it may not work with you for whatever reason. It may be that you've got a finger injury. It may be that you don't have the hand strength of other people for many, many, many different reasons. So there's not one way to do anything ever. All right. So, oh, I'm kind of messing up here because I was putting a hairline on there. I forgot this guy's got hair way up here, but we didn't mess anything up. We'll just take that hair off. So we just want to come in and freehand it right through here, and freehand it right through there. And then we're going to freehand it all the way around like so. Just a little band of hair, right? And again, it's going to come there. Those of you who like pencil lines. And those of you who think I'm cheating, no, this is also a Ticonderoga pencil. It's just a yellow one. If you don't know about the Ticonderoga pencil, that's one of the jokes I run, and it's not really a joke. These pencils, I'm not endorsed by them, but they're amazing pencils. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. They're available at several of your office-y big box stores. I just love them because when you sharpen up a really sharp point, they don't break and shatter like other pencils out there do. So that's a free plug for those guys. All right, So I'm just going to come down here and be lazy and just start scooping this stuff down. Now, everybody can take this moment to fill the back of your skull. And what I mean by that is the back of your skull way up here above your ears starts dipping in. I can't tell you how many people come way down here and then start dipping in. Don't quote me on it, but I think this is your occipital bone or something like that. But if you take and run your hand up the back of your neck, it starts coming out and then in way up here, not down here at your neckline. Okay, it fades into your neckline, yes. But you see how we're just going to fade all this stuff in, because that's going to now furthermore push that head forward of that torso. You see how now I'm getting close to the ear there, so I'm just going to tickle it back in, right? And I'm going around, and even on the bottom of that ear, when I get to the jaw, that's where I want to be. The one thing that I'm not telling you on this cut here, it's not down into it. You see how even there it's slightly up? I'd rather that come down into it instead of trying to dig down in here and dig down in there. Your paint is going to stop right there, and it's going to be perfectly fine, right? Right, like so. So now we're going to come into there and just come around there. Something like that. I'm going to take off a little bit more in this ear right in here, and then I'm going to just wrap it right around in there just to give me a shadow line. And I've got pencil line that we're going to evict, so we're just going to evict him. I got a little piece of pencil line right there. All right, so now let's block the rest of this out super quick, and I'll explain it as I'm going along. First and foremost, we want some wrinkles to, if we look at this, elbow is going to be up in here, right? So we want some wrinkles kind of going that way. We don't want that chicken foot or turkey foot in there. So elbow, so that's where we're going to start aiming from here. You see how we're going to come way down here, and we're going to come way up in here, and we're just going to start putting a line down toward that way. And then this is going to come back in behind the thumb. This is going to be a tighter cut, creating more of a shadow right inside there. Like so. Now we're going to knock off all the corners all the way around the top, back, machine mark gone, machine mark gone down in here. We're going to bring this over to that. What I mean by that is we're going to have a transition that's flat here. Hand is there. Right, like so. So now we're going to take this hand and go back into this spot here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, just like the mouth, I'm going to have an upward angle, a flat angle, and then an upward angle. Because we want that hand to appear to have that curve around it. Now we're going to come and knock the tip of that thumb off. And these are tiny cuts. So like I was telling you earlier, if we trust the process instead of digging after these big shapes all at once. So in other words, we're not coming here and digging as we're getting all that bulk off. Now you've got something to look at and establish where you want it. So I'm going to show you two types of wrinkles that we can do. One of them is just like we're doing here. You see how the gravity is hanging down, and we've got a wrinkle here, right? And then we got a wrinkle right where that robe goes down. Something like that. And we've got two somewhat relatively decent wrinkles. This, on the other hand, in my opinion, okay, so if somebody else says do a wrinkle like this, I can't find a piece of wood. You'd think I'd have wood everywhere. Hush, my dog's deciding it's time that she wants to be aggravating. Anyway, we'll do the wrinkle on the bottom. This, in my opinion, is not a wrinkle. It's too symmetrical. It's too perfect. It's too unorganic. And now I'm kind of trying to figure out, because I brought like 3 blocks of wood in for you guys just to show you some different stuff. Anyway, let's instead go to a different route. If we take a curvy tool, doesn't matter if it's this curvy tool, doesn't matter if it's this curvy tool, and we come up, gravity runs this way. And if we pitch that tool up on an angle and we just roll it downward, because that's the way the grain was running, and then up into here and we roll it upward. What you're going to have to do, now this takes some practice, but what you're having to do is you're having to adjust your tool to get to cut that direction. But what that does when you're adjusting your tool is it starts giving you inorganic shapes, which become very fantastic wrinkles. Okay, so even up here, let's say he's got a little wrinkle that goes up into there. You now don't have just a bunch of lines with the V tool. You've got something that represents a little bit of fabric, right? And they're organic, they're flowy. If you look down at your shirt or your blouse or your pants, hopefully you're wearing pants, maybe you're wearing shorts. Let's just leave it at that. Let's stop on that joke. Anyway, if you look at those curves and folds in your fabric, they're not perfectly symmetrical. They bend, they overlap, they intertwine. One gets bigger, one gets wider. One fades out into nothing. One has a hump on the back side of it, right? So start looking at that stuff and get away as much as you can from just those 2 V-tool cuts in a corner, because I can come in here with, you know, something else and just come in here and watch how I cut normally, and then I just go upward, right? And then I can come in here and just go upward. So make that tool do more than just carving a curve. And we're going to come down on there for something later. Same way here. Again, you see how we just pitched it toward the corner, right? Now the back side of this to me is very sharp. So what am I going to do? I'm going to come in here and just put a couple 1, 2 buckle my shoe type deals on it just to break up, get that glove out of the way. Just a couple of wompty-doos on the back side to break up that straight line. Now, at no point did I come in here and say that I need to come and cut down deep in here and cut down deep in there, because last time I checked, that's going to be blue or black or purple or green, and that's going to be blue or black or purple or green. So why am I trying to carve and see what he's got in his front pocket underneath his arm? You don't have to. You can come back there later and put a little V-tool if you want to, but we're not done. We're going to put a band on this guy, everything else. So let's do this other robe. Again, we're going to start backwards. We're going to knock off the top corners here, like so. We're going to knock off the back corner of that, right in there. I got a little bit of trash right in there. And we'll go all the way up to his neck because it didn't want to come out. And it's still not wanting to come out. So there we go. So now you see how that thumb's there? Well, that fabric's not that thick. That's thicker than the fabric on my hand and my body now. So we want to start coming way down and thin that fabric up. But look at the angle we're coming toward. Is we're coming back toward the back of that elbow. So now these are all straight down cuts. These are inward cuts because you're going around bone that does not bend. Okay, so that forearm's going this way, that upper arm's going this way, and look where that hand's going at a downward angle. We can just put us a little ghost cut right there. That's going to represent your forearm. The rest of this is fabric, like so. Knock off that high spot right in there. This high spot's, I know I can't curve it, so why don't we just get a curvy tool and curve it like so. That's perfect. Even if it's not perfect, it's still perfect, right? What I hope to, if I can, anybody learns anything from this video, what I want to kind of get you guys to thinking is everything doesn't have to be perfectly perfect. I would much rather have a clean cut that's slightly off than a bad cut in the right spot. The right spot means nothing without a good cut. So if you have a good cut and it's a clean cut, you can get away with a little bit more. So stop doing the hesitation cuts. Stop doing those break cuts where we're sticking it somewhere and we're kind of breaking and popping and twisting, blah, blah, blah. So those are the bad habits I'd say get rid of. All right. So now let's go ahead and finish off, or not finish off, but frame out the bottom of this. I already have a line on here, which is going to be a book. All right. So what I want to do for the first time in a long time is I want to go ahead and take this blade and I just want to narrow the feet, but I want to come across the top of that book. You see how we're going for that line right there? What I want to also tell you is I didn't miss that line 4 times. I snuck up on that line. There's no way. I mean, if you're good enough to go across it in one pass, great. I'm not. So I try to stay off of the line a little bit. Now, what I am doing, and I'm not telling you, is I want to come after I've got me just about a 16th. If you have an 1/8, you're still good. It don't matter. About a 16th of an inch or so. I want to now come. You see how this flares in the back? I want this to now go. Let me get my ink pen because or my gel pen because it's darker for video. You see how it flares out? Whoops. You see how, what is wrong with my pen? Oh, somebody's twisted it. There we go. You see how it's flaring out there? I want to come just up and just up, right like that. So I want to come from the tip that I created all the way down to that. Now, what I don't want to do is get a tool that's so big that starts cutting up into here. Luckily, this one is not that big, and we're just coming here. So now when I get close, I can lay it here and clean up the bottom of that robe. And now I've got a nice transition to go ahead and get me a nice cut on that book and the leg, right like that. Same way here. Now you've got a nice cut, and we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to first cut out the book. And here, when I get close, may as well not even try to get close. You see how we just went up through there? So now we can go, there's the line, and there's the line. Anyway, again, we're going to come from the tip up here all the way down to the back side of that, or you can come from the back side of this, nip it off, and go toward the front. However you can get to it is the way you should do it. There we go. And right like that. So now that's in line. We want to go a little deeper here. Again, we want to carve feet away, not book away. Now, I'm just going to take about an 1/8 of an inch off the front of these, like so. And again, when you get your depth, you can come back and clean up your book. And what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the top of that book. You see that little line in there? I'm just using that blade. So now these should come together. Now you want to knock off the corners of these toes. I want to put me a stop cut right here because that edge is not going to take a lot of force. So I'm putting a stop cut right in there and just knock off the corners of his toesies here. Now I want these toesies to start coming from the fat spot being at the bottom and coming in. But I did that kind of backwards, and there's no right or wrong way, okay? You just want it to flare to the outside, like so. I get some shadow line there for you. Same way here, I'm gonna put me a stop cut, like so. And we're just gonna knock off the corners going back this way. Now, it doesn't matter if you went deeper on one side or the other. You now have the outside of both feet carved. It pays you no dividend to come in here at the start and measure halfway when your feet may not be perfectly centered. So now that we have the outside of this foot and the outside of that foot, now you can measure halfway in between what you have left instead of measuring from the beginning. And if you see, I just put it here and guessed, and I put it on the other side and guessed, and I was within a 1/16 of an inch. But let's just see if that's half of the book. Well, in this case, it's really close, but again, it's about a 1/16 off of the feet. So what I mean by that is a 1/16 going to be noticeable? Probably not. But if you got a little heavy handed, like let's say right here on this corner, then you did the other side, you still have both feet to get 2 equal feet instead of cutting the center out first, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just going to take a V tool and just go ahead and get rid of my pencil line right through here. And then a V tool right through here and just put me a stop cut or a relief cut because it's backwards here. And now I have both my feet there that started in. We don't need this, nor do we need the pencil line above it. So I'm going to get rid of both. Go ahead and get rid of all the residual machine mark all the way around. And I've got something that broke out right here. So we'll just go ahead and go a little deeper and knock the back of that corner off, right like so. Now, the thing about the books, and I've kind of wrestled both ways. If you're going to write something, you kind of want the spine of the book here, but you also lose the detail that you have on the sides of these, because if this is setting up on a shelf, people are kind of looking at it from this angle. All right. Now, if you already looked, we've got different placement of the hands on this guy than we do this guy, and that's okay. There's nothing that says you have to do it JLO or JLP. JLP in my brain is just like picture. JLO is just like the other one that you've seen on a book, magazine, whatever. Take the basic shapes and run with it and do what you want to do. All right. So let me knock the corners of this all the way around. We're going to finish up this head and these eyes. I'm just knocking off the upper corners. Now here, I want it to go back from the head. So in other words, at the same angle that forehead's going up, we're just going to make it longer by knocking off that top corner. Be careful because this wood grain is changing all the way around here. We want to make sure that the ear is a little bit proud of the hair, right? You see how the ear is kind of flat? We want to take just a little bit of the hair down, and it's wanting to break right there. And we're just going to come in and make another little stop cut like so. I got a puppy dog that's kind of going crazy. All right, so let's come into here, and we kind of didn't plan on this, and you can see on the original, there's not a big wad of wood up there, but this is where I was talking about earlier, to where you can just come up with something else. It don't always have to be like it. I'm going to leave that big tuft of fabric right there, like his robe's kind of flaring over that way. That wasn't planned. It's not like, hey, watch what I can do. It's just what I see now. So I'm going to come in between those two with this number 11. Either it's a number 11 or a wonky number 9. All right, so just like that, you see how now we have a little bit more fabric, and we just used what we already had. It wasn't planned, but it makes for a little bit more interesting piece of fabric up there, like so. And we're just going to open this one up, little shadow line. So now let's come in here. We're going to angle. Hold on, let me throw a wood chip at the dog here. We're just going to angle this inward and roll it around down into that angle, right like that. So now we're going to come up here and just relieve that triangle up in there. So now you have a nice shadow. So now we can lay this tool way down this way, right? And just get that little detail of line right in there. So now we're going to do the same thing right here. We're going to go up to the chin. We're going to go down. And then we're going to take that little triangle out right there. And that should give you a nice little triangle up in there to give you some shadow line. We're going to take some stock cuts and relief cuts right through here. And let's just do a little cut right here. That'll make sense in a minute. We're going to do a little cut right here and come down into that little cut. We now want us a flat spot right there, flat-ish. All right. Again, this is just what can we get in there. All right. So now we're here and here. Let's just put us 2 little lines up through here. I'm actually going to go back and sneak a sharp-ish V-tool. And what I mean by sharp-ish V-tool is we don't want a 90-degree. I'm just going to come right up into here and put me 2 little lines to represent a little cordage, little rope. And we're going to get close to that flat spot that we made. Same way here, we're going to get 2 cords. And we're going to go to where it'll tuck underneath that side over there. So now here, what we want to do is I'm going to put the cross, and I don't even know if I want a cross, but this is going to be a necklace. So let's do like an orb here. Let's do something like this and do a flat disc. It's not an orb. I changed my mind that quick already again. So we're going to just do a disc, right? So now he's got 2 cords that goes down into this square disc. All right, because we had one hand down on the other, which gives us a little bit more space up in here. We want to frame this hand up. I'm using the blades there and getting this fabric now down lower. You see how it's jumping up here? I want these fabrics to start matching. And again, if yours is a little bit more narrow, get a smaller V-tool, because I'm laying this V-tool down on each side. And I just want to get it up in behind that orb, or not orb, that bar of square that I made. And some of you may be saying, well, what is the bar of square? What we can do with that bar of square, that's funny, square spot, is we can then come in here and put you the representation of one of the old flared crosses like they use in the medieval times. Now you can wood burn that in there, you can paint that in there, you can do whatever you want, but it don't have to be the big square, okay? If you get fancy enough, you could put a coin on there, some sort of, 1423. We could have put this hand down and carved something else in there. It doesn't matter. So we've got the robe. Let's get the back of these legs like so. Now we're going to do the same thing we did on the front of the shoes. We're going to start rounding the corners of these off like so. Right, like so. Got a little bit here. We started with this hand and we didn't do the wrinkles. That's not y'all's fault. That's the way my brain works. My brain is constantly jumping around. Like so. A couple more of those wrinkles we talked about. Even a number 9. You can put that number 9 up on its up on the top and skate it down. I don't know what the cut's called. I just call it a skating cut or a sliding cut. I didn't invent it. I seen it somewhere and I started using it, and I'd like to say, oh, it was, Jimmy Carver that did it, but I don't remember who it was. But it was years ago that I seen it. I don't know if it was like a Scandinavian carver or something like that. They only use gouges and stuff. They don't use a lot of knives, and some of them don't use any knives. So if you ever want to Google some interesting carving, just type in carving around the world or Scandinavian carving and German carving classes. The other one, if you Google like nutcracker carving, there's some interesting approaches on some of those guys that do nutcrackers too. So just because I'm caricature carving in my style doesn't mean that there's not other styles that you can incorporate with your type of carving. Even relief carvers and bird carvers, they've got a tip or trick, I'm sure. So there we go. There's our meaty stuff done. I don't know what he's going to have in his hands yet, so let's work on separating these feet, which is honestly not much. So it's a matter of a stock cut, and then I'm just going to slice down into each one of them. Notice what I'm not telling you is my hand is not here, okay? So I've got my hand well out of the way because that is a pressured cut. So now I can come and just tickle the sides of these off, rounding that big toe area like so. Same way here, rounding that big toe area. And then the back side of this, where the legs and everything meet, I want to put a triangle separating the feet, and then I want to put or an arch coming into each feet, and then just give me a little shadow line right there. I'm not going to dig and prod and poke around to get it separated. All you want's a good shadow line up in there. Take you a number 11 now. I think I have one right here. Just clean up your bandsaw marks through each side there. The reason this one I don't have as much is because I lowered the robe on this guy and the pattern. There was no original pattern. I just freehanded this one based off the one that I carved, which was also just freehanded out of a 2x2 block of wood. But I will make a pattern to come up with and put it on Facebook. There's someone pulling in our drive, so we'll have to bear with that for just a second, because no matter what I toss at her at the moment, she's just going to burn. So I'm just going to go around and clean up some of these spots. All right. So my dog has took care of the crazy barker. Just knocking off machine marks, nothing major. All right. So looks like about all we have is some hand detail, some eyes and mouth, and we can about call this guy almost done. I mean, there's hours more you could play around with on these carvings. It just all depends on what time and energy you want to put in for it. Now, is this what I call an Uncle Fred carving? I love you, baby. You know, if this is going to Uncle Fred, and Uncle Fred likes, you know, a hippie or a monk or something like that, Uncle Fred's going to be extremely happy with whatever he receives. And there's nothing wrong with the state of this. I mean, once we get it finished up, there's nothing wrong with the state of where this guy is now. But we also know that if we're carving this guy, this is a fun little carving. It could also possibly sell. But is this guy going to compete against something, you know, in the magnitude of a competition piece? No, because he's got bigger, bolder cuts. It's just you gotta look at your audience, what you're doing with that carving. What I am going to do is I'm going to start adding some shadow lines right here. I think the dog's kind of shut up for now. I'm going to come from this angle, just like we did up here. I'm going to come from this angle and go into the bottom of the hand, right like so. And then I'm going to come in from here and go up. And then I'm going to cut around the hand, giving some shadow line back up in there like so. Same way here, we're going to make sure that this is one row and it's not. You see how we got that right there? So now that it's one length, so to speak, now we can come into here, and I'm just going to put a little curve on this one and then a little curve back, just to match that little curve we had right there. And again, these don't have to be big cuts. You see how I'm going in it? And I didn't try to go here and cut all the way down. Like so. And now you've got shadow line that runs up into there. And you see this one little section? Just connect it. Sometimes it's just the little tiny cuts that we miss that makes all the difference in the world. I got a little bit of breakage right there, so let's go ahead and clean that up. Let's connect this collar to the back of the hood, collar, hood, whatever you want to call it, right here. Same way. Let's just connect that collar or door hood around like so. Everything that we're doing now is just kind of connecting the dots. Let's put a little triangle right in here just to separate that arm, thumb, and cloak right in there. Same way here. Let's just put a little triangle right down into there. Now, the one thing I didn't tell you that I was doing in this on the triangle is a lot of times our brain tells us, let's put a triangle in there. And then we start doing this. We have a triangle here and here. But if you look, I didn't change the direction. If his arm's going down and then his forearm's going in and his torso's going back, I didn't try to go in here. A lot of times we try to go in here and we think it's going to make it look like a deeper shadow line. But when in actuality, if you have a shadow line that doesn't change the angle in there, that's all the shadow line you need. You don't need to see the back of his elbow with that triangle.